Hi everyone, my name is Catherine and welcome to my channel. I wanted to talk about how as a 28-year-old, I've been able to travel to 52 different countries. So I love travel. I'm obsessed with maps. I'm wearing a map on my hoodie, if you can tell, and I have a map behind me. I don't just like tell people off the bat that I've been to so many different countries because I know, and I will acknowledge this right away, it's very much a privilege. I would not have been able to go to this many countries if it wasn't for my family supporting me, whether it be financially or emotionally, and I very much so recognize that. So that's why I also don't want to just tell everyone like, hey, I've been to 52 countries. But when people ask how many countries I've been to, they always ask, Catherine, how have you been to so many different countries? So I thought I would talk about it here and how I've been able to go to so many different places and how possibly you can go to this many places or go to more places. I actually didn't really start traveling until college, so this has all really been from college on, and I'm 28 now, so really the last 10 or so years of my life. Before then, I really had only been to Canada, the US, and then visiting my family in Belarus in Eastern Europe. But I would say a lot of different trips I've done did involve a lot of countries within one trip, and I've done different kinds of trips. So a lot of people, when they think of traveling, they only think of vacations. But there's just so many different ways in which you can travel, whether it be as a study abroad program. If you're a student, that is a great way to travel. You can volunteer and travel abroad. You can obviously, again, go on vacation or business trips to travel. And some of those can include places like cruises, for example. A lot of my traveling is going to be more centered around travel that is more likely to be done by a student or a younger person, such as studying abroad or doing an internship abroad, but I'm sure there's other options as well. I've definitely been looking into remote year, for example, or there's just generally nomadic life and living and working abroad remotely, which is definitely much more possible now with the pandemic. I think that's one great thing with the pandemic. It's allowed the concept of remote work to be normalized and, again, much more common, thus allowing us to travel. Of course, it's still not easy given time zone differences and a bunch of other reasons, but that is definitely a plus for sure. So just going back into my story, I started traveling back in college. The first couple of trips I did was with EF Ultimate Break, which I've talked about a lot on this trip. I love EF Ultimate Break so much. I have a couple of trips with them planned in the upcoming year, and it's always fun to also book a few of them back to back, or some of them go to multiple countries as well. So I first was able to do a couple of Europe trips with them, and again, everything is just so close to one another. If you go to Europe, you could probably hit like 10 countries easily, honestly. If you're there for a month or so, that might be a busy month, but I'm just giving an example. It's just so much easier to travel to different countries in Europe just because of the way that it is set up. So definitely that is one reason why I've been to so many countries. It's just Europe in general. I've been to Central Europe, I've been to Eastern Europe, I've been to Scandinavia. I've really just been, for the most part, most of Europe, maybe not so much the Balkans, but other than that, I've been to a lot of Europe. So that is one reason for sure. Another one is I did Semester at Sea, which is a study abroad organization. If you've heard of Sweet Life of Zack and Cody on Deck, the TV show on Disney Channel back in the day, that exists in real life, and I did that. So you live on a cruise ship essentially, and you take a semester abroad and you take classes and live on the ship with other college students, and it goes to 10 to 12 countries normally per semester, and it always varies depending on many different factors, what countries you go to. And when you're docked in country, you can just travel and classes aren't happening. So that is an amazing opportunity if you're able to do it. They do have options for adults. You can travel as a lifelong learner. So definitely you go into the Semester at Sea website. I can link it below. If you happen to work in the education or even other industries, honestly, I actually worked for Semester at Sea as a communications marketing assistant. So that, I didn't travel with them though, that was remote. But if you're a professor or if you're able to get one of the jobs on Semester at Sea, that is a way that you can travel with them. I traveled with them as a student. I would love to travel with them in the future. Obviously, these jobs are very highly sought after because you get to travel for work. Through them, I was able to go to about 10 countries throughout Asia and Africa. So this was my first experience being outside of North America and Europe, and that was back in 2016 when I was about 22 years old. So I think with Europe and going to these different countries, that was able to add to my total to be like 20 plus countries, if not 30. I would have to specifically count. So that is another option for you as well. And then after college, or even tracking before that, every single semester when I had time to travel, I would travel. So there would be summers, for example, where I would go and visit family in Belarus, and I would think, okay, I'm going to visit family in Belarus. I'm a student. I have this time off for like 2 months. I'm going to stop by Iceland on the way to Europe because it's also, the flights are cheaper. It's when you're in Iceland where things get expensive. I remember one year I noticed I had not been to Belgium and a few other countries around there, so I went to those countries. And honestly, if you want to hit up a lot of countries, it may be hard to get people to travel with you because it's hard enough with your own schedule and responsibilities to travel to many places that finding another person will make it double as hard. So being comfortable solo traveling will definitely up your chances of traveling. And if you're not comfortable solo traveling, it's not my favorite form of travel. Group travel that is meant for solo travelers or has solo travelers in mind, again, like EF Ultimate Break or Kentucky or some other like G Adventures as well, there's some that are for all ages, not just young adults, is a great option as well. But in general, Europe is a pretty friendly place for solo travelers to travel around, as long as you use common sense and avoid pickpocketers and that kind of stuff. So I would say, again, just utilizing my free time when I had time away from school, and I was lucky where I didn't need to work in between summers for financial reasons or whatever it may be. I do wish I did more internships, I'm not gonna lie, but I was able to travel a lot. So I did internships a bit later once I was kind of on the second half of being an undergraduate and then grad school and whatnot. So I really just utilized my resources and the time that I had to travel. And I rarely ever do just a trip to one country and then go home. I always utilize the most as I can. Even this year, I did an EF Ultimate Break trip, and instead of just going to Costa Rica, I did Costa Rica along with Ecuador and the Galapagos. So I hit a second country. And again, I know that that might not be possible for everyone, but just kind of sharing my experience and what I was able to do. And for another experience that I had abroad is I always wanted to experience living abroad, not move abroad permanently, but just for a time period. So after I finished college, I lived in Australia for a couple of months. Now, Australia is a massive country. It's a bit isolated given it is an island. So I did not hit a bunch of countries when I was in Australia. I really did focus on being in Australia and seeing different parts of Australia, but also I was interning. So learning about the industry, I was a video production assistant or intern. So learning about that as well. I did go to New Zealand and stop by there on the way back. So I was able to hit 2 countries. Australia does do a working holiday visa, and that's what I had as my way to go there. So if you don't want to do an internship and you just want to do something simpler, because I had to go through the process of applying and finding places and interviewing, a lot of people, they just want to go and travel. So you can go and work at like a coffee shop or retail or something on this visa as an American and you're good. You just show up and figure it out. I wasn't that bold, and at that point I did really need internship experience, so I went a little bit of a different route, but that's also an option. I know woofing is an option where you travel and you do work for the place that you live at, your host, and in turn you get free accommodation and possibly also free food as well. So I have this app called BEEN, B-E-E-N. So just looking again at where I've been to in the world, honestly, outside of me going to see a lot of Europe, the only times I've ever been to countries that were in Asia or Africa, besides one trip, which I will get to in a second, have been through semester at sea in that one semester. So I was able to knock out a lot of places in a short period of time. And I know a lot of people might not love that. They might want to really experience the country that they're in, which is totally great. It is really up to you. And I feel like for a lot of different trips I did, I was able to be in a country for 5-6 days at a time, and I got to see a decent amount. So I'm still happy with that. I was never in a country for literally 1 or 2 days unless it was a cruise. So in general, I'm happy with that. And another thing, cruises, another great way to see lots of different places. I've done a couple of cruises outside of semester at sea, mostly around Europe, just because I've always gone with my family, and my family is not as adventurous as I am when it comes to visiting different parts of the world. They want to. And just my last thing that I've done is doing a lot of these EF Ultimate Break or Kentucky trips. And with those, a lot of them do only go to one country, but a lot of them do also go to more than one country. And I do many times like to stack 2 trips back to back. So like I mentioned earlier, I did Costa Rica, Ecuador, and the Galapagos, which the Galapagos is part of Ecuador, but I like to reiterate because it's so different from like the mainland. And right there, I was able to go to 2 countries. My last international trip that I did before the pandemic, I went with Kentucky. I did 2 different trips. One was Egypt, and the next one was Israel and Jordan. So those 2 trips alone, I went to 5 countries. So when you're able to go on these trips, you're able to see a lot more, and that's just kind of been the way I've been able to see so many countries. I feel like when I think about how many places I've been to, it doesn't seem real, just because I'm not nomadic, I'm not always on the road. But over the last nearly 10 or so years, combining all of these different things that I've done and experiences, especially with semester at sea, like right there, that is 1/5 of the number count of how many countries I've been to. I was able to make it happen. So there's still so many places I need to go to. There's nearly 200 countries in the world. I've only seen 1/4 out of the world, which is still incredible. I would say that those are the ways that I was able to make it happen. And in general, outside of the pandemic years, I like to do at least 1 big trip a year. If I'm lucky, I get to do 2. And of course, being a student, I also was a grad student, so I've just been a student for up until the pandemic, and it just, with that schedule, made it a bit easier to travel. But I still think, for the most part, doing 1 big trip a year seems rather reasonable, and just doing that where you can combine maybe 2 EF trips or something along those lines, and you're able to hit 1 to 4 countries within that 1 trip, it'll add up over the years. And that's still what I'm trying to do. I still definitely want to make travel be very much a forefront in my life, even though I am working full-time currently at Nintendo. I have some fun trips planned for next year with EF Ultimate Break. Yeah, that has kind of been the way that I've been able to travel, just breaking it down. Something that seems kind of like a crazy number that not many people have been able to achieve makes more sense when you put travel at the forefront and a priority. I've also done videos on budget travel. Many times when I traveled, whenever I was traveling on my own, I would stay at hostels, I would eat at much cheaper places. And a lot of times when traveling, places are cheaper to spend money at than the US. It's just getting there that's expensive, but the cost of living around the world is generally cheaper than in the US. So it's just the transportation to that destination that's expensive. But once you're there, then it's rather affordable. That's kind of been a very scattered way of explaining how I've been able to travel so much. So if you have any questions, let me know. If you want to do a trip with EF Ultimate Break, I have a code you can use as well. Honestly, I love them. I'm not just saying that because I have a code. I'm going on trips with them next year. I went on trips with them this year. They're my favorite way to travel. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching again. I hope to see you in a future video of mine, and I hope you have a great day or night whenever you're seeing this. Bye.